So welcome back again. We're going to hit another view controller, one of the built-in ones from Apple, probably one of the most important of the ones built in by Apple, the UI navigation controller. We're going to go ahead and hit our same example that we've been hitting just to kind of normalize that. So we're going to be doing the Rose-Hulman buildings application, but this time we're going to be doing it with the nav controller. Just kind of as we get started here, there's some code to get started with on the nav controller, and these are all different. So go ahead and click to download the starting code for the navigation controller app, and you can start it doing its thing. Looks like mine goes a little slow, but it'll get there. And so this is going to be the third time that we've hit this particular app with a root view controller. There is actually another one called the UI split view controller. It's specific to iPad. We're going to do a different example when we get to that. So for this one, it's most similar to Chapter 9 in the reading. So Chapter 9, we're actually finally caught back up with the reading. If you've been following along with the assignments in the course, we've actually been way behind the reading for a while. Finally caught the reading today, so that was good. Admittedly, in the reading, they've done a lot more with table views, whereas we haven't hit table views yet. I'll say that the class isn't going to really quite do justice to table views, and one of the reasons is because the book does so good with table views. So we're going to kind of leave you in the book's capable hands with table views. The next app will use table views, but we won't go into near the depth that the book does. It does a great job with table views. So the app that you did in the book was a table view example with a nav controller. So when you clicked on something, it took you into a new view controller, and the nav controller took care of all the details behind the scenes of, like, allocating the view controller and making them communicate from one to another. The nav controller also goes ahead and puts up this navigation bar for you, this UI navigation bar, and it also takes care of the back button for you, which is kind of nice. And then the display for each one, it uses the title for that view controller, and it puts the title for the view controller up here, and the back button automatically has the name of the previous title. And so this is the example you did in the books. I'll say that navigation controllers don't have to use tables at all. And for this example, we're not going to use a table. I'm not showing you that because, hey, it's recommended this way. I'm just showing you that if you really want to know what a nav controller is, it might be nice to decouple it from as many other things as you can and just see what is the nav controller part isolated by itself. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to visit our same example. We're going to go through these same 6 pre-made views, these pre-made 6 view controllers. This image here was taken from the custom view controller, where you can see there's arrows going all the different directions. Whenever we did this with the tab bars, you might remember we didn't need a lot of these buttons. So we didn't need any of these, go to the menu buttons. We didn't need any of these arrows going around button. And in the navigation controller, it's kind of somewhere in between. The UI navigation controller, you get a back button for free. So you no longer need a back button. So, like, this was basically a back button. So we don't need that because we're going to get a back button for free. These guys hopped up to the menu. And so for the Munch Hall view controller, we don't need that because he'll already have a back button go to the menu. And then these guys are actually too low in the hierarchy to go directly to the menu. So we're not gonna give you access to that. We're just gonna use a back button. There's things we could do to fix that. The other thing that changes is once you go into one of these, so you're going to come into Munch and then you're going to go into one of the others. You don't need to go back to Munch because you'll have a back button. And we're also going to break this link here. We won't let you go from sibling to sibling because that doesn't fit the drill down approach of a navigation controller. The way I would think about the navigation controller graphically is, from this first view, you can click on the campus map, you'll go here. And then you can go back to the main menu. That's the only way you can go. If you go into the academic halls, you go into Munch. And then from Munch, you can branch out to any of the 3 others. And then they can go back to Munch, and then Munch can go back on up. So this is the structure that we're going to implement. And we will have to actually write some code this time to push these view controllers onto the navigation controller stack. So let's make a new project. So File, New Project. We're going to do a window-based application again for the iPhone. We could obviously do the template for the navigation controller, but I want to show you what this object is kind of in isolation. So we're going to do a window-based for an iPhone. And we're going to call it Rose Buildings Nav Controller. I've obviously done it once before, so I'm going to call it Rose Buildings Nav Controller Video. And just as we did last time, the first thing up is we're going to copy in a lot of those, or copy in those view controllers. And so you should have a folder when you unzip this called Rose Building Start Nav. Just drag that and drop that into your other sources and copy them in. Should already be checked, or it was for me at least. And copy those over. Hopefully there are no errors with them. You can do a quick build and just kind of make sure that there are no syntax errors in there. Hopefully it should all work. And so now let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the same thing we always do. Once we've got that code in there, we're going to start off by making a pointer that we can connect via an IB outlet. This time it's going to be, the root is going to be a nav controller. So we have a UI navigation controller. I will call this nav controller. I will make a property for it with an IB outlet. So we've done this many times. Admittedly, this is the first time that our root controller has been a nav controller, but the concepts are just the same. We're going to go ahead and synthesize it. And we're going to add its view to the window. So add subview self.navigationcontroller.view. It is really neat how Apple set it up to where no matter what approach you're using, the style is always the same, right? So I mean, you add its view, so it's got a view, and the view here will contain the navigation bar, the navigation items on the navigation bar, and then also the content view, which is showing, you know, like your view controller. And of course, to be a good memory management citizen, we should go release this thing. Unlike the tab bar view controller, we're not done writing code. There will be more code coming. But let's go ahead and play around with the zib a little bit. So go ahead and open up the main window zib file. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag over a navigation controller, and that's going to create the instance of a navigation controller that we're going to use. So just go ahead and drag from the library a navigation controller. If you click on the triangle here, you can see they were a little sneaky with this one as well. They actually created 4 objects. They created the navigation controller. They created the navigation bar, which is the visible bar you can see. They created a UI view controller, but it's of a generic type at present. We're going to change that to whatever we want to put in first. And then they also created a navigation item. And the navigation item is whatever you see on the screen for this particular content view's view controller view. So what we need to do is, instead of putting in a generic view controller, a navigation controller always has one view controller that it kind of starts with. It's the navigation controller's root view controller is what it really is. And in this case, the one that's going to go in first is our main menu view controller. So we want to change the type here to main menu view controller. Presto. We also want to make sure that we connect that outlet that we made to the nav controller. So hold down Control and drag from the app delegate to our nav controller and make that connection. And at this point, we should see the main menu on the screen, but clicking on the buttons won't do anything. So you load this guy up. Presto, you see this thing pop into the screen. If you click on the buttons, they don't do anything yet. I guess the modal will do its thing, but these won't drill down any just yet. Things you notice about this. The first thing you notice is that there is this big navigation bar at the top. This view did not have one of these before. If you go look at the zip file, it's not there. This is coming from the navigation controller. The reason it says Rose-Hulman Buildings is because I made that the title of this view controller. Let's go peek at that real quick, because there's going to be something sneaky in there for later. So main menu view controller, if you go to view did load, the reason it says that at the top is because I set that as the title. So the title of this view controller is Rose-Hulman Buildings. Let's go ahead and let's make those buttons do something. So I'm going to stop the simulator from running. There are two buttons on there. One is the walk around the academic halls. The other is to see the Rose-Hulman, info and map. And so we want to implement these two buttons. So let's just do the Munch one together. Then we'll talk about it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Munch Hall VC. I got second type in there, so Munch Hall View Controller. And we're going to do an alloc. And then we're going to do an init. When you're creating a view controller, in general use the init with nib name, and then bundle usually being nil. But if the zib file is the same name as the class file, then you can just use init, which we're going to do again here. Done that many times now. So now we've created it. It exists, in the heap. This view controller exists. And then whenever its view is about to be displayed, the view will exist as well. What we need to do to display it is this. We need to say self dot navigation controller. This is kind of sneaky. If your view controller has been placed into a UINavigationController stack, so it's a stack of view controllers. If you've been placed into there, you have a ready-made reference to that UINavigationController. This is something I didn't realize whenever I first started this stuff. But this is huge. It gives you a reference to your parent, for free. And so what we want to do is we want to say, hey parent, push on a new view controller. So we're going to say push view controller, push on this Munch Hall view controller, and go ahead and animate it. Yes, please. Animations are good. So with a single line of code here, we've said, hey parent, push this view controller on, and it will. The other nice thing is when you push it onto the stack, that will increase its retain count. So we actually no longer need to retain it. So long as it's in the stack, it'll be retained. If it ever falls out of the stack, it'll get deallocated. And the UI view controller, the navigation controller will take care of your memory management for the most part. Doing it this way, the only trouble is if you click on it again, it'll have to make it again from scratch. But you know what? It's a price I'm willing to pay for convenience. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to do the same thing. New Rose info view controller. So this is the info / map. So the Rose info view controller, alloc, init, because the zib has the same name already. Self.navigation item, navigation controller. Push on the Rose-Hulman info view controller. Yes, I'd love for it to be animated. And once you're responsible for the memory management, I don't have to be anymore. I'm going to release. Cool. So rather quickly, we've implemented both of these buttons. Let's see if we've done anything useful. If I click on this one, you can see that it loads up the map. That snapping in was kind of unintentional, but it's fine. You can see that this view controller still works. It goes around and it shows different buildings on campus, the Rose-Hulman campus. It's a scroll view, so you can zoom in and scroll around. And you'll notice that we've got this little button here that says main on it. This is our back button. We've got this for free, and we can click on Munch, and we can come in here and its modal view controller works, but these buttons don't work yet. One little bit of sneakiness is that I did is that the back button, it actually displays the title in this area. But you can see here the title says Rose-Hulman Buildings. Then here the title says Main. So why are they not the same? The reason they're not the same is because I did a little bit of sneakiness. And what you can do is you can change the back button such that it's different. And so that function is already in here. I just kind of went ahead and added it. And what it looks like is this, every view controller that is in the navigation controller stack has not only a reference to the navigation controller, it also has a reference to its navigation item. And its navigation item is what's displayed, in the top center when it's live. You can also add things like edit buttons, things like this. And then it also affects when you become the thing that's pointed to in the back button. You can set your navigation items back bar button item. So what we did here is I made a new bar button item called, it says main, it's bordered, target itself, the action is nil. The action is nil, this actually means use the default action. The default action is to do a back on the navigation controller. And then I just set that, and then it works. This is a common thing because often you want the, you've got a lot more space here than you do in this back button. So to make it all fit, we did this. Great, so phase number 2 is we want these 3 buttons to also drill down into a Hadley view controller, a Crapo library, and a Myers view controller. So this is going to be implemented within the Munch view controller. The way this works is these are actually buttons, even though they don't look like buttons, they're buttons. They actually all call the same IB action, but by looking at the name on the button, you can figure out which view controller you should load. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and find the Munch Hall view controller. And you can see that I've got some to-dos in here for you. So if they press one of those 3 buttons, it will call this IB action. I know it's annoying to work with other people's code. I always hate it. But I wanted to try to focus on just the navigation controller, so you have to use my code. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the text that's on the button, and then depending on what it is, that decides who we're going to push onto the stack. So let's do this. So if we want to get the text that's on the button, so the button's text, that's equal to sender is our button. We're going to typecast it to UI button pointer because we know that it was a button. Then we're going to grab the title label from there, and then we're going to grab the title label's text. We've done this a couple times, so I did it kind of quickly. The first time I did this, obviously, I used the help a lot. I'm like, well, what is the text on a button called? It's called the title label, and then that's a UI label, and to get the text, it's text, right? But once you do it a few times, you get pretty used to what the properties are called. And if the button text is equal to this, there's a couple ways to do this. Usually when I compare strings, I do a case insensitive compare, and that would work fine. I would just check to make sure it's NS ordered same. Just for a little variety, you could also use is equal, and you can pass in an object, or there's even a specific one for is equal to string. The only difference is equal to string assumes that it's already a string you're passing, so it's kind of a convenience for the more generic is equal. So we'll say if it's equal to Hadley-Olin. The nice thing about is equal is it returns a bool, which is true if it is equal. And if it is equal, then we want to push on a Hadley-Olin view controller. To make my code a little bit more efficient here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to make a pointer called new hall, and then I'm going to say new hall is equal to, in this case, it'll be equal to a Hadley-Olin view controller. I'm going to be lazy and copy paste a little. If that wasn't true, we'll do an else if. Else if maybe it's a crapo library. Oops, sorry. Hall crapo library. And if it is, then we'll load up a crapo library view controller. And if it's not one of those, we'll see if it is a Hall Myers view controller. And if it is, we'll load up a Hall Myers view controller. I'm going to make a slight tweak to this later, but go with it for now. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is we need to actually push it onto the stack. So we're going to say self.navigationController. Oops, it doesn't like somewhere. It thinks I've got a syntax error. No, they're not. Self.navigationController. Push navigation. Nope, not navigation item. Push view controller. We're going to push on the new Hall. We're going to animate it. Yes, indeedy. And also at this point, once it's been pushed, we can release it. Just to mention one little thing, here you can see I say if, and then I say else if, else if. The logic analyzer won't like things like this, so if you say build, build and analyze. Static analyzer, by the way, great tool. Use it a lot. You can see that it's worried that the argument that's passed in here, new Hall, it might be undefined. So if it didn't hit any of these categories, it might be undefined. So the logic analyzer would prefer you to make your last one a catch-all, or at least have some kind of catch-all to where you've defined it. So I'm just going to say if it wasn't those two, then I know it's a Myers. And then if I run my logic analyzer again, build and analyze, it'll be much happier with the way I chose to do that statement there. Cool, so let's go try it, see if it works. So if we click on the map, that still works just like it did before. The buildings, just like it did before. If we click on Hadley, it'll go down to Hadley. You can see the back button says Munch. Didn't have to do any fancy changing here because it was already short enough. When I'm inside Hadley, I can get the information about its buildings. I think this looks really sharp. Crapo, I can get the information about its buildings. And then this one will be kind of weird. Whenever you push something on, it always kind of slides over from the other side. So if you click on this arrow, it kind of still slides over from over here. So I mean, that is one advantage of the custom view controller is you can, you have control over all of your animations. But you can see that Myers works just fine. Cool, so at this point we've made a really slick little navigation controller. It drills down into all the different things. And we've implemented the style that we've shown right here. So it drills down into each of them. So what a navigation controller is it takes care of making your views on the screen visible, putting them up, taking them down. It handles the memory management for you, and it's a view controller. Cool, and I think that's really all I wanted to show you about navigation controllers. The code's in here if you ever want to look at the slides. So typically, UI navigation controllers are recommended to be used with UI table views, but you don't have to. You can definitely use it without it. You can see we did here. So that completes the third mechanism that we're going to use for the view controller controllers. The only one we've got left is the iPad. I'm hoping to squeeze in a table view example and a split view controller example, and that'll probably be our last demo app for the rest of the quarter. Probably do one example with like putting something on a store, and then if there's time remaining, maybe something with an iAd. We'll see. Cool. All right. So hopefully you understand UI navigation controllers a lot better, and the book helped you learn how to use them with table views. See you next time.